You may not even have to see that. All right, the top 5. The 5 most Big 12-ish schools in the Pac-12. These are the schools that are the most Big 12-like. And I will tell you, I did not include Arizona in this just to maybe pivot away because there's another school pretty close to them that's in the list, just to get a little different.
Why?
You'll see. Again, you'll see. You'll see. You'll see. Whose top 5 is it? That's the rule.
The shows.
It damn well isn't. Number 5.
That's like the list you did earlier this week that of the 7 teams or teams that won't join the Big 12, and the ones you eliminated are the only ones that might join the Big 12.
Which one are you talking about?
The one when you said these are the teams most likely to join the Big 12 if they add anybody, and you eliminated the entire conference that we're talking about that might have teams join the Big 12.
So I'm doing.
Go ahead.
Again, there's a method to my madness. I cannot. But number 5, Colorado. They're the most. They could be number 1, but I don't think they necessarily want this because they have to come back to the Big 12. But they were in it already before. So they are a very Big 12-ish team because they were Big 12, a founding member, in fact, of the Big 12. They're also a Big 8-ish team, for that matter. But Colorado fits in the Big 12, should it come to that point, which, again, I don't think is imminent.
Won the Big 12 one year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, upset Texas in a big game.
2001? Yeah.
Yeah, in the conference championship game, and derailed Texas' grand hopes that year by doing so. But yeah, I mean, like you said, I mean, it's pretty obvious they were in the Big 12 for longer than they've been in the Pac-12. I think, right? 96 to what year did they leave?
They left
I don't
in
even
10
remember.
With Nebraska. No, with Nebraska.
Yeah, they've been in there
12
longer.
years, and it was 14 or so.
Yeah, so I mean, they make sense. I mean, Dion's a guy who's got a lot of experience down in this area as well. Lived here a long time, coached here, played here in the state of Texas, all that jazz. So, yeah, I mean, Colorado's the most obvious as far as similarities because they were one of us, so to speak, back in the day.
Number 4, Washington State. Look, it is not close to anything other than Moscow, Idaho, which is the home of the University of Idaho. But Pullman, Washington, much like Ames or Kansas State or West Virginia, they are kind of out there on their own. They are very different than the other state school, the big state school. And Washington is there, in the big city. Washington State's remote. It is their fans are passionate, very much like a Kansas State or an Iowa State. And, if they've got good stuff going on, where are you going to go in Pullman, Washington? Not very far, unless you want to go, shoot an elk or catch a walleye, then yeah. But otherwise, I mean, you've got a good captive audience there. Much like, I would compare it very favorably to Manhattan or Ames or Morgantown.
Yeah, it's those places to a certain degree, but just really far away compared to those places, and that's why they're a school that is certainly banking on the Pac-12 sticking together. They really don't have probably a great option outside of that. I mean, it's that or it's probably a step down. I think that's just being realistic about the situation because there's not necessarily anything that makes them such a pull that if things were to fall apart, the Big 12's like, we got to get Washington State on the phone. And look, I say that knowing full well that there's plenty of Big 12 teams that didn't get the call and all of that, so we can go ahead and roll through all those comments. I get that. But, yeah, if you're lining up the Big 12 and saying take your first few picks at the Pac-12, you can take anybody that you want. Let's just get rid of all of, the actuality of what's going on. I don't think they're very high up on that list. But, as far as, kind of how they are, so to speak, yeah, I think that they'd fit in, with the Big 12, as far as some of the similarities in, the town and those types of things, sure.
Yeah.
Manhattan is about 20,000 larger population than Pullman. I just was curious, 32,000 to 54,000, but I'm sure most everybody in Pullman's wearing their colors, like Gene Taylor mentioned about Manhattan.
And very much so, and Clinton, I hope you're still with us here. Oregon State, for that matter. And look, the Oregon State, Washington State ag schools, much like Oklahoma State is, and thanks for Wet Blanket for bringing that up. So you've got those different things, like Tech. I mean, you're out there, and you are the thing in that spot. And that's why I'm kind of lining it up as those are the ones that are most similar. And look, I'm sure that, Oregon and Washington are in the water, then they're going to leap over Oregon State and Washington State. But Oregon State and Washington State, if it came down to it, if those are the schools that you'd have to take to expand, don't actually, aren't that, far afield of what the majority of the Big 12 is, or at least especially the current Big 12. Before you start adding the new teams that are all from bigger spots.
Clint Moses' day, because he comes on every day with the Beavers. He goes, Washington State makes great cheese, too.
Oh, I did not know that.
I did not know that.
It's good to know. Number 2, even though they don't seem to want to be in the Big 12, Utah.
Now that it's Oregon State for that matter. But
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think most of them really want to. I think they'd rather keep things the way that they are and not have to shuffle the deck. But Utah, and I swapped out Utah for Arizona just so we could have this discussion. But Utah fits just like Arizona does, but Utah doesn't seem to really want to. And I think the biggest reason is they don't want to be in a conference with BYU. I don't think that the rivalry's fine, but having to play against them and everything where it counts in the league, it's just not something they want. And so while they would fit very well in the league, I just think that it is absolutely not their preference to do so unless they had to.
Yeah, I think probably the biggest reason why would be because it would make them look silly. Yeah. You went and joined the Pac-12 and got to have your little bragging rights over whoever you wanted to have bragging rights over, whether it was an at-the-time independent BYU or whoever else you wanted to name that wasn't in a Power 5. All of a sudden you're in a Power 5, and just, a few years later after you start winning it, it's not even a Power 5 anymore, and now you got to go crawl over to the conference that's got the team that you don't want to have anything to do with. Kind of a bad look if you're a Ute. So, yeah, if I was them, I wouldn't want to have that happen either, because it makes you look, not top tier, or second rate just seems to sound too harsh, but it kind of does make you look a little second rate if that were to be the way that it unfolded in this imaginary scenario. So, yeah, I think, in particular, it's a Power 5 and it's when you're winning right now. So who would want to leave the Pac-12 when you're winning the Pac-12 and you've got this avenue where you're in a really good spot, and an expanded playoff means you're probably in that sucker more often than not if you keep up the way that you are right now, with obviously trading probably off here and there with the Oregons and the Washingtons. But yeah, I don't blame them, and I see where they're coming from, because that would be kind of a bad look in a few different ways.
Number 1, Arizona State.
Would it almost be like you leave home and then you have to come back?
It would be like Colorado coming back to the Big 12.
Yeah.
After hey, see you suckers, we're going to go make this money. We're going to be out west, and all of a sudden a few years later you're back and you're worse for wear, and you're pay, let us back in. That wouldn't look good.
Here's another reason Utah should fight to keep the Pac together at all costs. They've won the damn thing 2 years in a row.
That's what I just said.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like it would be foolish of them to be like, we don't need this. It's going great for them.
They won the conference. They've got they just said they expanded playoff. They're going to be in that sucker. Like last year, an expanded playoff, they're in the playoff. Mm-hmm. I mean, so why would you want to leave that? It's a Power 5 that you're winning. And even if Oregon or Washington jump up and have, better teams one year, you're still in the top mix the way that it's set up. And it's not exactly, because it's not exactly like a Colorado scenario, but it's not one you want to be a part of, where you're having to walk away from this scenario that you pumped up and were so happy about.
Yeah. And number 1, Arizona State. I think Arizona State, honestly, it kind of boggles my mind that they are not great in everything. It really does. Garrett and I were there,
tremendous campus.
Just over a week ago. The campus is unbelievable. They've got great academic programs, but they're also, not impossible to get into. So if you're not like a super student, like you can get through and not feel like you're at Stanford or Duke or somewhere like that. It has nothing other than an ocean view that you wouldn't want anywhere else.
No, my dad got his master's from there.
But I don't
I would love to have gone there.
Yeah, they are not cashing in like what they have, maybe more than most in the country. But I do think that they fit very well in their profile inside the Big 12, especially when you talk about the new Big 12. And look, you can swap out Arizona for any of these schools. And we had Jason Shear on. Another reason I took it off, because we'd already kind of been through that. But Arizona State, you could swap them out almost anywhere, and it'd be fine. They would work all over the place. They're not making it work in the Pac-12 well enough, and maybe that's why there's some dissension there as far as, there's some upset and hurt feelings as it was going in. But again, like you could really have the best of all worlds if you're Arizona State, and I don't know how they have not capitalized on that.
It made terrible football coaching hires.
Exactly.
That's why. I mean, that's the biggest part of the reason why is they've made terrible football coaching hires. I think Kenny Dillingham will change that, but Herm Edwards wasn't exactly inspired, and neither were the immediate predecessors to that.
Todd Graham.
Yeah, like I just don't think that those were very good choices, but I think Kenny Dillingham having the experience out there, the love for the place, and the fact the Pac-12's not, not the hardest, league to like conquer. It's not like you're joining the SEC right out of the gates. Like it's manageable. It's he can navigate that. He knows the lay of the land. He knows what they need, what they have, and what they don't have. So it's not like foreign and this giant mountain to climb. So I'm very curious to see how he does, because if it doesn't work for him, then I really don't know who it's going to work for.
Yeah.
I mean, I really don't.
The high school talent seems to be getting better, and as far as a little bit more known and deeper in Arizona.
Well, you got their Bijans and guys like that. Every year they've got some high-profile guys, but it's just not necessarily the deepest, in the world.
They've got some dudes in that top 300 or so,
Yeah.
and sometimes a little bit underrated. I mean, it's a spacious. I love Arizona. I love the weather. I love the city. Once lived there back before they ever exploded. It's a beautiful place.
Spencer
Arizona
Rattler's
State
from
would be
Arizona.
great. Yep,
That's another one.
absolutely. All right. Thank you, Paul, for your top 5. There's a little argument going on about